This is May 14th as I'm starting to put these clips together for a garden video, but I suspect it'll be 10 days or more before I upload it. I'm just doing things gradually in the garden and taking some clips as I go along. I just finished planting my strawberries, the 5 that I grew from seed. Variety is Fresca. They're in a row at the end of this bed, and if you see sort of potholes as you go up there, my bare root ever-bearing strawberries, also called Albion, arrived the other day, and I've had them in for 2 or 3 days. I don't know, they were supposed to be 12, they sent 13, that was nice of them, but several of them I don't think are going to do anything. They look pretty dead to me. Some of them had some green growth on them, so I'll get something out of them, and if they don't all germinate, I will pot up some runners. These ever-bearing varieties, which means they have the heavy part of their fruit in late June or whatever, and continue to bear some fruit right up until frost. They do produce runners. If you get back here further in this thing, you see green back there, that is some of my alpines that I moved out of the hoop house, and they're doing very well. I think there was 13 of those as well, and most of them have a blossom or two on them. But the interesting thing about alpines, which I didn't know when I first bought them, they don't produce runners. They will sometimes send up a small plant from the roots next to the main plant, but there's no runners going all over everywhere and trying to root. So that was nice when they were inside the hoop house, but out here I don't mind so much. I can pot up runners and get a larger planting of strawberries. If you see green, I don't know, get in on any of it or not. If you see green grass, what looks like green grass coming up through, I'm probably not getting it. I can't see as usual. There's some right there. It isn't actually grass. I'm using straw, not hay, starting my Ruth Stout garden here. And whatever kind of straw it is, I don't know. I'm buying it from the same place that I get my feed for the chickens. If it's hay or barley or oats or what it might be, those are seeds that are in the straw that have germinated. And the interesting thing about them is the roots are not down in the ground. Can't imagine that they will last very long unless they can feed off of the decomposing straw. But you can pick that clump up, and the roots are just in the straw, quite a ways down from the ground. So I think if covered over with another layer of straw, that will probably smother them, and then there'll be more grow when next time it rains from that straw. But I guess that's part of the process. Well, I'll show you now an area that was 4 raised beds that I'm working on this morning. Well, this is an area that was 4 raised beds, 4 foot square each, and the lumber that was holding them into beds is rotted. I also had 2 trellises that I used to grow beans and peas up, but those have rotted as well. So I took all of that out. It was surrounded by a low fence to keep rabbits out, because I grew things in here that rabbits like, and we have lots of wild snowshoe hare here. I removed the fence as well because the posts were all rotten and it was falling over. I'm just leaving this to show you a contrast. 3 of the beds I have been working in just for a few minutes here. Pulled up the grass and things that was left over from last year's garden and used a scuffle hoe, a stirrup hoe. This thing, I call it a scuffle hoe, some people call it a stirrup hoe. It does a good job anyway at cutting off smaller weeds. And that one last bed here I've got to finish. I just wanted to show you what they looked like before I started. And I will be covering it with straw, and where Angel is walking there now are the aisles that were there before. I'm going to leave those. They will probably get straw down into them, but I think walking over them constantly will keep any of that stuff that's there now from growing up through the straw. There's only one plant in there only one plant that is a plant that you would use in a garden. There is one Mary Washington asparagus plant, and it's on the right-hand side here in the far bed, and it started to come up already. It sent out one shoot. It's my favorite asparagus, so I am not digging it up and moving it. You set them back, and it's 2 or 3 years before you can harvest from them again if you move one of the things. They like to be where they're at. I love it. It has the biggest, fattest spears, so it's going to grow there with whatever I plant there. I'm going to transplant my 4 rhubarb seedlings out into one of these beds as soon as I get it covered with hay and whatever. And the rest of it I planned to grow squash in this area. 2 varieties of winter squash, a buttercup variety, and the Hokkaido pumpkin or red curry squash, same thing with 2 names, and a summer squash, a crookneck yellow summer squash plant. That's what's going to be planted here this summer, I guess. Be a while yet, at least 2 or 3 weeks before we can put anything out. We had frost just a couple of mornings ago. It went down to 1 degree overnight, and there was frost in various areas, one on my car when I got up in the morning. So I'm glad I didn't have anything out. I would have lost it then, but it is warming up now. And traditionally we plant out around the 24th of May, but there's nothing really to be gained by getting it out that early. It's still too cool at night for it to progress very well. So I'll show you what this looks like in a few minutes when I get the last of the weeding done and the straw distributed. That's 1 bale of hay distributed just on the top of the 4 beds. And I decided to plant the 4 rhubarb in the bed that has the 1 Mary Washington asparagus plant. Don't want to disturb the asparagus plant, and that way when the rhubarb comes up in years to come I won't be planting anything else in there with it. So that sort of made sense. I'm using straw, and incredible distance I have to go to get it. There isn't an agricultural community here where I live. I drive 100 kilometers to the town of St. Stephen, and that's where I also, same feed store, I get the feed for my hens and whatever. And they sell bales of straw. And they very kindly put the bales of straw in a huge plastic bag for me so that it doesn't make a mess in the car. I drive a little subcompact, a Kia Rio, and if I fold the back seats down, it's a hatchback, I can get 2 bales in at a time. So that's 1 bale, and I still have one that I haven't opened, and it will be probably 3 weeks before I plant the squash in here. So I'll just leave it be until that time, add more when I put in the squash plants. They've been in the hoopos in pots now for several days, but I just checked and nothing is up yet, so it'll be a good 3 weeks anyway before they're ready to transplant outside. But there is Mary Washington asparagus and my Victoria rhubarb that I grew from seeds. 4 plants there, different sizes. One's a really good size, 2 aren't too bad, and one's a runt. But now that they're transplanted into the ground, I think they'll probably do much better. It was kind of warm in the hoopos for them. Well, I've just had a delivery of items for my garden, I guess you'd have to call it. 20 bags of composted cow manure. That's the white ones on the bottom. And 10 large bags of an organic soil mix to use in raised beds. I'll take you over and show you that closer because the maker of it really fascinates me that they're coming out with something organic. Well, in this area in particular, it's very difficult to come up with organic planting materials, and I'm so surprised. You can see that or not up there. This is made by Miracle Grow, and if you're not from North America, I don't know if Miracle Grow is in Europe or Australia or wherever you might be watching from or not, but they're a manufacturer of mostly water-soluble fertilizers. Nothing organic about them, chemical fertilizers, and I have used them in the past. They're a good product. They make special ones for tomatoes, another one just for your vegetable garden. I think they even have one for your lawn. But they're now going into an organic soil, and I discovered from reading the fine print on the back that they've also produced an organic fertilizer to continue feeding this with. It says this is good for a month. What's in it wouldn't have to have any additional feeding, but they also sell a organic fertilizer to use along with this product. So I must go back to the garden centers and see if somebody is carrying that. I want some of that as well. Very interested to see how this is working out. I can't see, well, I guess the label that I was reading is on the back, but it gives you the ingredients that are in it, and it's all healthy, natural, composted products. I guess you can see that here. The makeup is 0.10, 0.07 and 0.10 again, so it's not a highly fertile product, but it's got a mixture of coir, however you want to pronounce it, peat moss and other flaxseed mulch and all sorts of things have been added. So I will be adding that to the beds in the hoop house to freshen them up some, and I'll be using it in a few containers just to see how it works out. And the price wasn't bad either. It's a little bit more expensive than I pay for the other stuff, but the other stuff is not organic. Well, good morning, everybody. It is now May the 21st, and I'm about to do my first harvest of asparagus. The asparagus bed is doing quite well this year. I think all of my plants in there now are old enough to harvest from. I brought rather a large basket. I don't stand much of a chance of filling that, but it was all I could find this morning. I have been eating it, but I've been eating it raw. I like it raw almost as much as I do cooked. The interesting thing that I learned from reading and research about asparagus, the size of the spear when it comes through the ground, that's the size it's going to be when it's full grown. It doesn't get any fatter. Like, for example, this one here is a nice sized spear. When it came through the ground, that's the size that it was, and it will remain that size. They don't get fatter as they mature. And the fat one is just as good as the thin ones. They're not more tender if they're thin or fat or whatever. I'll show you on this one though. I cut that off down low. And if you want to know what part to cook, if you hold it by both ends and bend where it snaps, this part up here is really nice and tender. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that part, but it's a little tougher, and so you can take a vegetable peeler and peel it, and then cook it along with the rest of the asparagus, and it's just as good as the tender top then. Well, I think I'm just about finished anyway. I was going to say I'll let you see what I get when I finish, but I think I'm just about finished. I'll probably get another picking out of it, and then after that I let it go, form its ferns to make sure that I'm going to get a good crop next year. Some of these are still too short. I'll wait, but that's certainly enough for a nice meal. I just love the first asparagus of the season. Delicious. Carrying on with my attempt at Ruth Stote's gardening method, I'm about to plant my potatoes in straw. This is still the same date, the 21st, when I did the asparagus clip under. These are Linzer Delicatas that you're looking at. I bought 2 kilograms of them. What is that? That's 4.4 pounds, I guess. I like them. You can read that, gives you a better idea of what they look like. They're a fingerling. German, I think, banana fingerling type anyway. And they say they're good boiled or steamed or whatever. And they're an excellent potato for salad. They have sort of a waxy texture to them. I really like the thing, so I decided I would go with those as my main crop of potatoes. And they are an early variety. 60... I don't see it there now. 60 some days to maturity from the time that you plant them. Something like 65 days, I think. Rapid reading, and I still don't see it there, but I read previously that they are what's considered an early potato. And besides that, I am planting, if I can get you back out there, I thought I saved both Cara and Charlotte potatoes, just a few small ones to replant as seeds. I just opened this plastic bag up. They've just been in my basement all winter, and they certainly have chitted well. These ones here, the other ones have been chitting for close to 2 weeks maybe. But the more I look at these, I think all I have is Cara. I'll know for sure, I guess, when I harvest them. Cara has pink, a lot of pink on the potato. This has pink on the sprouts, but I'm not seeing any pink on the potato, so maybe I do have both. But anyway, I plan to put those in as well. And you'll see the area in a minute where I'm planting. It isn't very big. There's more potatoes here than I should be planting in that space. I will save out 2 or 3 of the nicer Lindsay delicatas to plant in a container. I have a friend that I always take some containers of different vegetables for her deck. She grows them on a deck in the summertime, so I will save some of those out to take her at least 1 container of them. Anyway, let's have a look over at where I'm going to be planting these. I was going to say, as you can see, this is next to the hoop house, but I'm looking at the screen and I don't see the hoop house, just behind it there. For a couple of years there's been a raised bed here. Didn't have any wooden sides on it or anything, but it's where I emptied out containers of compost that I had things planted in for a couple of years. And I would plant, I think last year it had a few squash and a little bit of corn in it. And all I did was just knock that mound down and spread it out. As you can see, weeds and grass and stuff sticking up through. The maritime gardener that I followed, and he did the Ruth Stout method, he showed how he planted his potatoes in particular. All he did was take a heavy rake and rough up the grass so that there was a little dirt showing through, and spread them out and cover them with hay. So at least mine are going on top of some compost, and I will set them out for you, and then I'll show you putting the hay on them. Well, I'm sure you probably can't see all of the potatoes. Some of them are quite far away, but it worked out better than I thought it would. They're still probably too close together, but they'll do. It's not a commercial potato plantation, I guess. So now I'm going to cover it with a good layer of straw. Bring you back when I finish that project. Well, I put it on quite thickly, but I tried to put it as loose as I could, shaking it out so that the growing plants could come up through it, and a rainstorm or two will compact it down quite a bit. But potatoes is one thing in particular. You've not only for the weeds, but you've got to make sure that you keep them well covered with hay in the summertime. You don't want sunlight to get down through, and you'll have green burnt potatoes, sunburnt potatoes. This is a good location in another sense. I have about 200 feet of garden hose coming from my house to get out here, and it terminates just right here where this bed is. So if we should have a long, hot, dry summer, I've got the hose right there to do the watering. I think the main issue with it, though, is going to be brambles. Wild blackberry and raspberry, mostly wild blackberry. There were 2 or 3 different kinds of wild blackberry in it when I was preparing it. All I did was take shears and cut them off, because there's no sense in pulling them up. Leave a ½ inch of it in the ground and it'll come up anyway. So I would just keep cutting them off, I guess, as they make it through. And I think that's about to get easier for me to bring straw and things home from my garden. I think come Thursday I will own a truck. That's if I work out a deal with the dealership that I'm working with right now. Let's just say we've had a small matter of their honesty that I'm concerned about. Anyway, they've assured me that they'll have everything fixed by Thursday, the date that I want to pick it up. So if they don't, I'll just go elsewhere, I guess. But I'm looking at getting a truck, a Toyota Tacoma Limited. I went all the way to Limited, which is top of the line, just because of Angel. It has leather seats. It's almost impossible to remove Angel's hair from fabric seats, so I went with leather seats because Angel's in the truck just as much, or the car just as much as I am. Well, I don't know if I said or not, but that's 3/4 of a bale, and I've only got 1/4 of a bale left, so let's hope I do get that truck. I'll show you a few things that are progressing, I guess, in the hoop house here. This is the 23rd of May, and I'm putting the final clips together so that I can get this video uploaded for the weekend. To the far left there is my corn, variety espresso, and not looking too badly. It's, it's only been started, only been up now for a little over a week, and it's growing quite nicely. I had something pull up several of them and eat the little kernel of corn off the bottom. I only lost one. There's one plot there. If you can see in this one over here, there's one empty pot, and I never did put another seed back in it. But some of them that were pulled up and it ate the corn, whatever it was, still had lots of roots. I repotted them and they seem to be doing okay. Next to them, right there, that's California poppies, a free packet that came, one of those things that companies throw into your seed order for nothing. It's called Purple Gleam, and they're getting some of their second and third leaves on them. Next to that is the cucumbers, and they are a gherkin, a European-style gherkin. 25 seeds, and I have 24 germinations. The one little area there has 2 in it. I had 1 seed left over, so I put it in that area and got 2 in that, and they're starting to grow their second leaf, the first true leaf, so they're going to be planted mostly in here in the hoop house, I think. This is 2 varieties of squash, excellent germination on them. The red curry squash, or Hokkaido pumpkin, whichever you prefer to call it. One pot there seems to have, well, not up yet, probably never will be. And the other one is Sweet Mama. It's a buttercup type squash, semi-vining, not supposed to crawl all over the place anyway. But next to it, fascinates me, that's a tray of Delta, which is a yellow crookneck squash, planted the same day as the flat of squash that I just showed you. There is 1 plant up, and there are 2 more that are showing some green. You probably can't see them from this angle, but nothing in all those in all the other pots. Now maybe they will come, but I'm amazed at how much slower they were than the winter type squash. Well, this is a row of beets, a variety called Merlin, and as you can see they are far too thick, but I'm at least pleased that I had such good germination. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, with all of the older varieties of beets that you grow, the seed that you're planting isn't actually 1 seed, it's a cluster. There are newer hybrid varieties that I have grown in the past that it's actually just a single seed most of the time. So I didn't actually plant these that thickly, it's just that there was good germination, and these little clusters all sent up several plants. I'm hoping that I can let them grow on a bit more so that I will get greens when I thin them. Believe it or not, I weeded there about 3 or 4 days ago, and it's thick with weeds again now too. But very pleased with the germination. I prepared this soil the same way I have been for a number of years when planting beets. I added composted, I think it was sheep manure, but I saved the ash out of the wood stove in the cabin, and the ash got added and mixed in. I added a little agricultural lime and a little organic fertilizer, and so far so good anyway. They're looking great. It's a 16-foot row. Should get enough beets out of that to do some canning plus eat fresh, I guess. I brought my broccoli seedlings outside, and they're on a bench here in just outside of the hoop house. I think it was too hot in there for broccoli. Broccoli doesn't care for heat. It hasn't even been terribly hot yet, but on sunny afternoons I think they were not developing as well as I'd like to see them. Can you see this one here? It's got a good 3rd leaf coming on it. I want them to get several leaves before I put them out, so keep them watered and use them here on the bench. And I also brought out my lettuce, Little Gem Pearl is the variety, and I'll show you right here what I have done with those, if I can get the camera moved. I plan to grow them in these like window box trays here, and they're all seeded in, planted in there, transplanted in there yesterday. I think 7 in this one and 5 in each of these 2 shorter ones, which will produce a lot of lettuce. The remaining ones I'll pot up for my friend that's getting the potatoes and a few other things later on. I think this is a 12-foot long bed. Anyway, what is planted down the center there, again a bit on the thick side, are radishes. And what I have planned for this bed is 2 rows of bush beans. I have 2 varieties, a yellow bush bean and a green bush bean, and if the radishes aren't all harvested by that time, it won't really matter. I can plant them down either side, and eventually I'll be pulling out all the radish anyway. And the beans, there really isn't an advantage to planting them too early. They like the soil warm, so it'll be at least mid-June, I think, before I put my beans in. And this bed is next to the one with the radish in it, and it has a long row of peas, edible pod type of pea, snap pea, called sugar lace. And if you can see all the little tendrils on it, it's probably where it gets its lace name. But again, it's a bush variety, so it doesn't require staking. And what I plan to plant in this bed are my, what we call turnips. Other people call rutabagas or Swedes here. Other people call them rutabagas or Swedes. We call them turnips. I planted mine far too early last year, and I ended up with turnips that weighed 10 pounds and more, and it's quite ridiculous, really. So it's going to be at least July before I put my turnips in. So the peas will be finished by then, and I'll just cut the vines off and transplant my turnips in there. All 3 of my Romance series cherry tree bush type plants are going to have blossoms. That's the furthest one away that you're looking at there. I don't know that I could dig down, I think, find the tag and find the name, but I can only remember one name. It's the one closest to me. It's called Juliet. And somebody in my last video, when I said I knew that they were bred in Canada but thought maybe it was Manitoba, told me no, it's the University of Saskatchewan, I think, that created the breed. Anyway, that one is in full bloom and doesn't have that many blossoms, but I'm not surprised. It's the first time it's ever had blossoms, and that is one that the very first winter, the snowshoe hare, the rabbits here, clipped it off almost to ground level, and it grew back. It's taller than the one in the middle now, so I'm pleased that it's got some blooms on it. Now if I can try to swing this, I don't know. My problem, as usual, with this camera is I cannot see the screen in bright sunlight. The one in the center there has a lot of buds, and the one right here next to me has a lot of buds, blossom buds, but they're not open yet. Though another day or 2 of sunlight, I guess, before they open up. But with that many blossoms, surely I'm going to get some cherries to try this year. My grafted Asian pear is in bloom. All 4 grafts are alive and looking good. Only 2 of them are producing blossoms this year. I've never understood the reason for the grafting other than you get 4 varieties on one plant. I'm hoping it doesn't mean that some of the varieties need the other variety for cross-pollination. I've only got 2 varieties out this year, so time will tell, I guess, whether or not it produces pears this year, but it's nice and healthy. It's got lots of leaves, and not sure why the other 2 grafts didn't set any blossoms this year. Now, this is my purple plum, which last year only had a handful of blossoms, and this year has a reasonable set of blossoms. About 50% of them are out now. And next to it, wrong way. Next to it is this thing, which, if you've been watching my videos in the past, I have mentioned many times. Started life as an apricot. The apricot died. This came up from the root and is now a full-size tree, I guess. And it is a plum of some sort. I managed to get it to produce 1 or 2 yellow plums many years ago, but it doesn't really produce fruit. I'm just hoping that it's a good pollinator for my purple plum. The tree in behind it that you can't really see now was bought for a pollinator. It has a Japanese sounding name that I can never remember. but it has been trying to die for many years, and it's looking even sadder this year. It only has a handful of blossoms coming out, so I'm hoping between the two of them they get my plums pollinated. I'd like to be able to make some plum jam again this year. Well, this is the last item that I will show. It's a crabapple tree. Variety is chestnut, and I understand that the small crabapples on it look a lot like a russet crabapple. It's only been in my garden one winter, 1 year. It replaced one. They sent it to me last year as a replacement for one that I bought the year previous that leaved out and died immediately, whatever was wrong with it. But this has got blossom buds on it only after 1 year. I'm so impressed with it. If you can see in the background behind it, there's another crabapple called Dolgo. It's a red crabapple, and it's not having any blooms this year. It's been here 2 years, but curious to see if this sets some fruit. At the terminus of almost every branch, there's a cluster of blossom buds getting ready to open. And both of these are not the ornamental flowering crabs that you see in gardens with all the beautiful colors or whatever. I suspect once that pink blossom opens, they'll be white, but they're the variety that you actually get crab apples from. Well, I'll get this put together and uploaded and get it on YouTube for this weekend. Thank you very much for watching.